Hello, my name is Dean Contover. This is the Current Buzz. Today we have attorney Richard Howe Jr. He's the Register of Deeds and he's a Lowell Historian. He has a blog called richardhowe.com if you want to look it up. And the history on Lowell, go to that website, richardhowe.com, and he'll tell you. Richard Howe is known for giving tours in cemetery tours, and he loves monuments. So we're not going to get into that. We're going to talk first about his new book called the Lowell Review, right? And it says lowellreview.com on the back, and you're going to do this annually, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Register of Deeds, a big thing is I always have a fascination in regards to what do they call that? Homestead, right? And I want you to explain a homestead. This is the application. It's easy. You can download it. 2 pages. Is it still $35?
Yes.
Okay. Explain the homestead, why people should do it, why they shouldn't do it. And I know there's some new laws that have come into effect. So
sure.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me on,
Yeah.
first of all. So I'm the Register of Deeds, so I oversee the Registry of Deeds, which is at the new Judicial Center in Lowell. The Declaration of Homestead is something that's been around for more than 100 years in Massachusetts. And it's a way to protect the family home from creditors. So in 2011, the state legislature amended the homestead law that granted everyone who owns a home and lives in the home an automatic homestead exemption of $125,000. So just by the mere fact you own a home and you live in it, you have some degree of protection of the equity in that home from creditors. However, if you want to file a declaration of homestead, the form that you have with you, you raise the exemption or the protection up to $500,000. And so let me illustrate how that happens. The way the law reads is it says it protects from the laws of debt collection $500,000 in the value
like
of
credit
the home.
cards and things like that.
Right. So if you fall behind on your credit cards, you get sued. Citibank gets an execution against you,
Okay.
and they record that against your house. Conceivably, they could follow through and force the sale of your house to collect the debt. What the homestead does is it prevents them from doing that. And if your house is worth more than $500,000, it at least prevents them from doing it for the first $500,000 in value of the house. And I compare the homestead a little bit to having a big, loud dog in your house. If somebody's trying to break into your house and they rattle the door and there's a great big dog that's barking, they're probably going to move on to a softer target. They could still force their way in and subdue the dog and do what they wanted to do, but more than often than not, they're going to leave. And so the same thing, the way it works with a creditor is if you fall behind, they're trying to look at your assets, they see you own a house, they see there's a homestead, they're going to say, well, let's not waste any time trying to pierce through the homestead. So it's a good thing. There's no downside to it. It's a one-time fee of $35. Right. If a married couple owns the house, they both must declare the homestead. If an individual does, the individual declares it. If the property is in a trust, the beneficiaries who live in the home are entitled to homestead protection. There's just a different form that's filed, but it's the same price and it works the exact same way. So the registry's website is lowelldeeds.com. That's lowelldeeds.com. And there's a whole section about the homestead, including PDF versions of the form that you can download, print, and then record with us.
Okay. If you own a condo?
A condo, yeah, is the same thing. It's a home. If you own a trailer, that's a little different because usually you don't own the land that is underneath it. I think you can still record a homestead, but there's some ambiguity about where you record it. I think you're supposed to record it with the town clerk because we wouldn't take it because it's not land that's being protected.
I see. Okay. So to me, it's like an insurance policy.
Exactly. It doesn't replace insurance. And the main, and a couple other things it doesn't do is it doesn't protect against your mortgage lender. So you can't borrow $500,000, not pay it back, have the foreclosure start and say, wait a minute, I have a homestead. I can keep my house. That doesn't work. And many people ask, well, does it protect me against nursing home costs? Well, if you were a private pay patient and you ran up a big bill and they sued you, it would. But when most people ask that, they're really referring to Medicaid, having the state pay for your nursing home care. And it doesn't completely protect you against that, because when you apply for Medicaid, you kind of waive some of your rights. Although Medicaid doesn't take your house, in some cases it might get a lien after you or your spouse has passed away. But there really, like I said, is no downside to doing it. It's fairly easy. You print the form from our website, you sign it, you have to get it notarized, you can mail it to us to record. So it's a pretty easy thing to do.
And you'll mail a copy, once it's recorded, you'll mail a copy back to them.
Well, we actually mail the original back, because the registry has only ever kept official copies of the records and returned the original to the home.
Oh, okay, but they'll have the deed number and the booking number on the copy
that
it was done.
Right, and every document
whatever
ever recorded at the registry is available on our website, the lowelldeeds.com site. So, if someday you start saying, I wonder where my deed is, and you start tearing your house apart and you can't find it, don't worry about it. All you ever need is a copy you get from the Registry of Deeds. And you can either download it from our website for free, and if you can't do that, you just call us or email us and we'll send you a copy for free.
Oh, okay, that's good to know. Yeah, homestead's very important. A lot of people don't realize that it's easy to do and it protects you. And it only protects you if you have a debt prior to doing the homestead. That doesn't help.
That's right. When you need it, it's too late to get it.
That's right.
Right. So you get it before you fall upon hard times.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So we got that squared away.
Thanks that's a great public service to bring that up.
It is. No, I always agree. You've been on the show before. We've talked about homestead. That was a few years ago. So I'm glad I got that topic behind us, so to speak. I have Richard Howe. He's a Register of Deed, but we're going to now talk about Lowell Historian and what that means. He has a blog called richardhowe.com. Everybody in the know in Lowell or Greater Lowell, even nationwide, people follow your blog.
Well, yeah, but most of the people who live elsewhere that follow it have roots in this area and are still interested in it. But yeah, I started the website, richardhowe.com, back in 2007.
Wow.
And what launched it was Marty Meehan's announcement back then that he was leaving Congress to become the chancellor at UMass Lowell.
I remember him.
That triggered a special election, and that started in March of 2007. And at that time, the blogging was sort of still a new phenomenon at that time. There was no Facebook then. There was no Twitter then. There was no social media. And so I thought, well, this might be a good opportunity to launch a blog that covered politics, because there was no other congressional election in the entire country going on at that time. And that was Nikki Tsongas and Eileen Donoghue and Jamie Eldridge and Barry Feingold and Jim Maselli were the 5 Democrats, and Jim Oganowski was the Republican nominee. And Nikki Tsongas ultimately prevailed. But that's how the blog came about. Along the way, I got co-bloggers, Paul Marion, Marie Sweeney, and Tony Accardi. We were all contributing to it. And then it continued, and there was a real focus on particularly Lowell politics. But what happened was in 2017, 2018, between the national politics and kind of Facebook and Twitter really kind of getting out of hand, in my opinion, and that trickling down to the local level, I pivoted away from covering politics and focused more on covering local history and also using it as a platform to promote local writers, of which there are many very skilled and talented.
Is it just Lowell or is it Greater Lowell?
It's beyond that. I mean, we changed the subheading. It used to be richardhowe.com, Lowell Politics and History. Now it's richardhowe.com, Voices from Lowell and Beyond. So we actually have contributors from Alaska. We have a regular feature from Ireland. We have Irish writers usually every Friday. So it's become a little international, but it's also kind of eclectic. I think people who lived and died by what was going on in the Lowell City Council maybe have moved away from it because they wanted that kind of jolt of political coverage. But there's some great writing and poetry, and it's a great place to try things out, if both as a reader and a contributor.
I think what happened is you have a book now, Lowell Municipal Elections from 1965 to 2015. I could show that's one of your books, and that probably came from the blog, more or less.
It did.
The idea.
Yep.
Yep. Then we have state elections in Lowell from 1970 to 2020. So that's pretty new, and that's another book. All right, I'm going to go through your books before. We have Community and Country Greater Lowell Veterans from 1919 to 2019. It's another book in regards to Greater Lowell. Lowell has a lot of veterans and organizations in the city, and there's many organizations in the city, believe it or not, right? I mean, how many veterans organizations are there?
Well, through time, there's maybe 36 that are identified in there, but I think like many other social organizations or groups, new people aren't joining, and so as the existing members kind of age out, many of these organizations are sort of fading away. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons we did that book.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
And your co-author was Robert Casper. He's from Chelmsford.
He is. Bob Casper. He ran Bob's Coins. It used to be right in the town center. I think he retired a little while ago.
Yeah, he did retire. And I don't know what's going to happen to that property, but I remember that distinctly going in there, and he had medals and he had coins and he had gold and so forth. But that's a nice picture. That's another. Anything else? Oh, here we have Legendary Locals of Lowell. This is another book by. Oh, you were with Rosenberg, right? This is your first.
That was my first one. Yep.
First one. This is another one. I don't know if you could see it up here. It's autographed, so. Then there was. The Images of Modern America, Lowell, Massachusetts, and this is on your own. I submitted some pictures, if you remember.
Yes.
And thank you for putting them in.
Jack Kerouac's funeral.
Yeah, Jack Kerouac's funeral. I was at Jack Kerouac's funeral. There's quite a few pictures of Lowell, modern Lowell and old Lowell, so to speak. That's another book. And this is what we're going to really talk about. The Lowell Review, right? How did this start, and who started it? Why was it started?
Well, I mentioned earlier the pivot on the website, the richardhowe.com, away from local politics to more writing, essays, fiction, poetry, things like that. And there's some really talented people submitting stuff to us.
I know half of them. I was looking at the authors that you had.
And so I wanted to provide a platform to promote these writers because there's a great heritage of literature in this area. The Kerouac, going back to others. Edgar Allan Poe came here. Mm-hmm. Charles Dickens wrote a whole chapter of one of his books about the day he visited Lowell. And so there are contemporary writers who I think have great talent. And so we use the blog to promote them, and each day we try to have something new on the site. And so the Lowell Review came about as sort of a way of capturing what we might call the best of the blog for the year. And there's a long heritage of these literary magazines.
Right.
That
Lowell Offering, for example.
the Lowell Offering is one.
Explain that, Lowell Offering, for people who don't know or new to the Merrimack Valley area.
Well, the Lowell Offering it was started in the 1840s by the young women who worked in the mills. And even though they were working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, when they got done at night, they didn't go crash in their beds. They did things, and they were very interested in culture. And they edited and wrote the Lowell Offering, and I think it lasted for almost 10 years, and it was all original work that they
And
published.
women wrote it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wrote it,
Let's not
edited
forget
it.
that.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, which was a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more common now, but in the 1840s it was almost unheard of.
Right.
And that's one of the stories of Lowell, is that as hard as it was for the women to work in the mills, it wasn't all that much harder than their life on farms, but they were actually getting paid for it. And getting paid for work was very empowering to the women. And so I think that's something that's underappreciated about the Lowell story. Anyway, Paul Marion and I decided to do this Lowell Review, and we're taking advantage of a relatively new technology called print on demand, meaning we didn't have to find a local printer or a publisher. You just compose the book yourself, you design it, you upload it to a site, and if anybody wants a copy, they go to the site, it's called Lulu, Lulu.com, and they order a copy of the book. At that place, they press a button, their machine spits out a copy of the book, and they send it to you. And so in one way, it makes it much more economical, because you don't have to buy a minimum order of 500 books and then have them stored in your basement as you're trying to figure out where to sell them locally. You order like 20 copies for yourself, and then just let people who want one order it online. It gets made as they order it, and within a week, it's delivered right to your front door.
Well, that's pretty common in the last 5 or 10 years, right?
Yes.
Order on demand.
Yeah, and actually that's the technology I used for the state election and the city election book.
Oh, I see.
I'm a kind of an early adopter of technology, but particularly at the Registry of Deeds.
Yeah.
But through all that, I've really come to the belief that the best storage medium for information is still a printed and bound book. Because if somebody finds a book and it looks interesting, they're likely to find a home for it. If somebody comes upon a box of loose papers, it might be interesting, but nobody's going to take it. And so by taking information that you've acquired otherwise, because it's something of interest to you, the bar is not set that high to get it printed in a book like this.
Right.
And
it lasts forever. I mean,
Well, for long enough. But just as an example, this book, the initial copy I bought, the proof copy,
which is
this is the state elections book, it was less than $10. So it's not like you have to have a major outlay of capital. You just compose the book, you design it, and I did it in Microsoft Word. You upload it to the site. They send you a copy for about $10. You make the proofs, you change it, you upload a new version with your fixes, and it's good to go.
I don't have very much time. How would a person get in contact with you if they have something they want to submit to you for the Lowell Review?
Well, we are
right here.
We do welcome contributions. The Lowell Review. So to get into Lowell Review, you have to get on the blog first.
Oh.
And like I said, there's something new every day, so we're always looking for new content. Go to richardhowe.com, click on the About link, and it'll tell you exactly how to, and it's basically send me an email with whatever you want attached. We'll look it over, and as long as it's not something that's going to get me sued for libel by posting it, we'll put it on the blog and consider it for next.
What's the process again? Let me write this down.
So go to richardhowe.com.
Yeah, I know. Okay, got that.
And right in the upper left corner, it says About.
Okay.
Click on that, and it will tell you exactly how to how you can contribute something. If you'd like a copy of the Lowell Review, up in the left-hand corner, there's a little box with the cover, and the entire book is available free online. So you can order a hard copy,
Right.
but if you'd like to check it out first, you can just read it right there for free. And then if you want the paper copy, you can order it.
I read your story in regards to you were in the military. You were an officer in intelligence. Is that my?
Yep, Army Intelligence.
Army Intelligence, and you were stationed in Germany for 3 years, and you talk about that in the review, and you went back to Germany, and you realized that the Germans have come to understand, they did something bad during World War II, and or you think there was a new generation coming in and that changed the philosophy?
Well, the essay I wrote in there was about the difference between what I saw from 1980 to 83 when I was stationed mostly in Nuremberg.
Right.
And then,
I've been to Nuremberg.
and actually, that's where I met my wife. She's from Manchester, New Hampshire, but she was also in the Army at the time, and we both met while we were serving.
Right.
And we came back and got out of the Army and we got married. But in 2007, we brought our then 16-year-old son to Germany to show him where we'd been stationed, where we'd met. And so the difference between 1980 and 2007 to me was amazing in how the Germans recognized the Nazi era. In 1980, there was some recognition of it, but it was very understated. It was still almost like...
They never talked about it, really.
Yeah, they didn't. Like, I went to the concentration camp outside of Munich, Dachau, and it was there, and it was on the map, and you could go, and there was like this Quonset hut that had some folders you could look through, and you could walk around the grounds, but there really wasn't much there. In 2007, we went back, and it was a very elaborate museum. But what was most impressive was it was really a clear and accurate reckoning of what the German people had done. And in my essay, I contrast it to how America has treated, say, how we treated the indigenous people and the institution of slavery, where if you want to talk about slavery in schools today, it's still a controversial topic.
Let's talk about lynchings, 4,048 lynchings that we know of, but that's another story.
And so whether it was Nuremberg or Berlin or Berchtesgaden, no matter where we went, there were these really very interesting museums that were very forthcoming, very frank about what had happened. And I think partly the people who had been involved in it had moved on from the scene. Many of them had died by the 2000s.
Yeah.
But the newer generation didn't like whitewash what had happened. They embraced it and said, this is what we did.
Yeah.
We don't want it to happen again.
I was there when Schindler's List was, and I was in Nuremberg, the Nazi, what's that, the encampment outside of Nuremberg, where they had the rallies.
Yeah, it was. I forget. As I said, that the base I was stationed at was right across the street, and we called it the fairgrounds because that's where like the Oktoberfest in Nuremberg would set up there because it was a great big open cement space.
Yeah, yeah. It's Nuremberg was interesting because that's where Nazism started.
Right.
And they really bombed the hell out of it. I was told it was 90% destroyed. And they did a good job of building it up.
True, but a lot of the old town is restored, but there was some pretty severe ground combat there. The American